As long as we're talking about the state of the economy, consumer sentiment has continued to plummet. It's the last time we measured it, it was at an all-time low. Now it's at an all-timer lower, if you can believe that.
Warning signs for the U.S. economy. Consumer sentiment hitting an all-time low amid growing concerns about inflation and
All-timer lower.
Trump's war with Iran, which means Americans are more down on the economy than at any other time since 1952. That's a long time ago. And it comes as Kevin Warsh, who Trump picked as the new Federal Reserve chairman, in the hopes that Warsh would lower interest rates.
In the Epstein files, of course.
Was just sworn in.
Boy, 1952 was bad. No, 1952 is when they started measuring consumer sentiment. It's the worst it's ever been. You tend to skip over why this is bad, so I think it's worth telling people that the reason this metric is low is because people hoard money when sentiment is low. Yes, and there's a compounding effect too, because the overall velocity of money is already low. The lower the velocity of the wealth pool already is, the more lower consumer sentiment affects the relative velocity of the remaining wealth that is that moves around through the economy. That is to say, right now, more so than ever before, at any point in the history of American capitalism, too little money is moving around midst consumers. So the more Americans hoard their money and don't spend, the greater of an effect it has proportionally on the relatively lower volume of high velocity money, if that makes any sense. People are more careful with their spending because the economy sucks. Which means that, in a way, my insistence on continuing to buy high-quality Japanese clothing is actually a great economic booster. But, I'm holding up the Seattle economy, I just want to say. Should I stop spending money? Oh my God, yes. You have no idea how bad it's going to get. You think you know how bad it's going to get because you've experienced in your lifetime a tiny fraction of the hardship that looms over us like a tidal wave 10 times the height of the tallest mast on a ship out in the middle of the sea. You have no idea how bad it's going to get. Don't spend money. Stop eating. Learn how to do photosynthesis.
Now, Trump claiming today that Warsh will be free from any pressure from Trump in the job.
I want Kevin to be totally independent. I want him to be independent and just do a great job.
Now, Kevin Warsh is well aware of the reality, which is that is hard to believe, because you will remember what Trump routinely said about the former chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell. That's Warsh's predecessor.
Notably not in the Epstein files.
Trump said pretty nasty things about him when Powell refused to
rape children on Little St. James.
Do Trump's bidding.
Oh.
We have a terrible chairman right now. We have a lousy Fed chair. He's a fool. He's a stupid man. He's incompetent.
I'm sure Kevin Warsh is ready for that if he does what the markets think he's going to need to do, which is the opposite of what Trump wants. Einstein and Ives, Peter Tuchman and Dan Ives are back here with me. Okay, so let's just start here, Peter, with this consumer sentiment.
There's also a pretty huge issue coming into change, regarding the change in laws concerning the requirement for index funds. No, you're right. It's actually a huge deal and it's under-discussed. I should be talking about it more. Basically, reading your comment, people with pensions and 401ks are locked into buying set stock at price, and new stocks on the NASDAQ will be graded more by market cap than long-term stability. SpaceX, along with many massive AI companies, are going public over the next few months. There's going to be a rug pull no one can avoid. In essence, the money locked up in 401ks and pensions, which is an enormous amount of money, right? Money that gets invested in the stock market on your behalf without your saying so. They are loosening the laws on how conservatively that money might be invested. So it might have been the case before that the hedge funds managing your retirement savings would have to spread it out midst many baskets, we're just broadly investing in the S&P 500. But now some of those caps are being lifted, and the hedge funds managing your 401k are going to be going all in on fucking GameStop. The people managing your retirement funds are now legally obligated to go all in on Bed Bath & Beyond shorts, okay? The people managing your retirement are posting GM to each other every morning.
There's consumer sentiment and there's consumer confidence. There's two different numbers. They come out a couple weeks apart. They are both saying horrific things. Today, it's the lowest level since 1952. A couple weeks ago, the other measure was the lowest level in an even longer period of time. It's incredible, okay? And we were just talking about it. We'll just get our whiteboard out of the way right away. Let's get it out right away.
For reference on what the Fed chair would need to do in order to get out of the economic crisis from the 79 oil crisis, they had to raise interest rates to 20%. Yes, but that can never happen again. Because back in the 1970s, the economy wasn't as financialized. If you raise the interest rates that high now, and I'm not joking, the sort of oligarchs that run the White House would simply have Trump make him stop. Like the political will is non-existent. Too much power is held by people who cannot have the interest rates be that high.
People's perception of their personal finances fell 13%. It's an unlucky number. Down 13% in 1 month. That number really stands out.
Is it this month, or just this past month?
This past month. Yeah.
Okay, look, that is after we've been in the conflict now for what 3 months?
84 days.
Okay.
Yep. So just
and
about, exactly,
think about it. We've sustained a price of a barrel of oil above $100 for way too long. That has got to be the biggest inflationary component of all.
Yeah.
And think about it. And I'm sure not only people who are in the stock market, but
I don't want to talk about their clothing.
Everyday person.
I actually like the sweater on the guy on the right.
Who's living paycheck to paycheck, or anybody who has a blue-collar job, is noticing that everything related to gas and or oil is expensive, is really expensive, and it's whether they're paying
K-shaped.
Right. Explain the K-shape, because that's something.
It's everything. The K-shape. Where
How do hedge funds make money off 401ks? All financial institutions make money the exact same way, by lending it and charging interest. That's it. Institutions that have money leverage it to borrow more money and invest it, or they have people take out loans and charge interest on them. That's it. The entire economy is that. It's just a bunch of financial institutions doing this in a circle. That's it. It's an infinite money glitch that they all participate in. The more people invest in the stock market, the more money there is in the pool for them to do it with, which is why 401ks and pensions and so on are invested in the stock market, so rich people can molest your money more. It's just that before they were obligated to molest your money kind of gently through clothing, and now they can just get their hand up in there.
On the high end, those, whether it's the market exposed to tech and everything we see going on in Silicon Valley,
the market just keeps going up and up and up, even as American consumer situation is going down, right? So the K, that's the K.
Yeah, and a lot of that is AI and tech driven. And then, as Peter's talking about, on the low end, in terms of just the regular economy, you continue to see it soft, and you see some of the Walmart numbers and others, and it speaks to what we're going through right now in terms of this unevenness.
There's certain times when the market goes in concert with the economy, and then there's some times where they kind of bifurcate, right? And that's at a high, in my opinion, we're at that point now in such a huge way.
All right. And
the analysis exists to make you stupider, There is nothing the American political and corporate elite want more than for the average prole to believe that their economic prosperity is in any way, shape, or form tied to the health of the stock market. There is no fundamental connection between these things. All connections between them are correlational, not causative. It's because so much of the economy has been diverted into financial institutions that the health of those financial institutions is like a waterline for the health of the economy overall. You do not benefit from the line going up. Even if you have your funds invested in the stock market, your pension or 401k or whatever, that money has to come from somewhere. The amount of your retirement pool goes up, sure, but it's being done in concert with the overall financialization of the economy, meaning there's less wealth moving around in the real economy, which means that overall everyone gets poorer.
And there's only so long that can continue. Something's got to give. The question is what? We don't know.
Right.
But when you have Kevin Warsh coming in, okay, I think the last person to come in such a bizarre moment was probably Alan Greenspan.
Yes.
Okay, and Kevin Warsh comes in. Trump wants rates to go down. And Kevin Warsh, maybe a few months ago, would have been possibly on board with that. That was one of the reasons Trump wanted to pick him. But now you got a situation where you have an inflation problem, even as you have a growth problem. And to solve that, the market's now saying, hey, guess what, Kevin Warsh? You're going to have to raise rates even as people are in pain.
Well, that's what the market's saying. And the reality is like a dual mandate when you think about growth and then, of course, lowering inflation. Look, inflation's creeping up. And as we've talked about relative to oil and what we're seeing from PPI to CPI, and Warsh is going to come in and basically has to he's going to sort of clear the decks and say, okay, we're ultimately going to have an economy that is very focused in terms of, making sure inflation doesn't get worse. And the reality is that's probably a
Okay, shut up.
Are feeling about the economy. According to the University of Michigan survey, consumer sentiment has dropped 3 straight months to the lowest level in the survey's 50-year history. That's lower than during the COVID pandemic and lower.
A bigwig from Wall Street was interviewed by CNBC in 2016 about which presidential candidate was the best, and he said Bernie in a second because the velocity of money POV, Bernie stimulus was the best for the economy. Well, I'm glad somebody knows who they're talking about. 243, you say?
Do from there. That's what I'd be doing.
Are there sectors that you look out at right now and think, if I were still in the game, this is an area that I would go after?
Yeah, I look at some distress, mainly in Europe today, but I look at distress, yeah.
In Europe?
Yeah.
Let's move on to the presidential elections. I'm curious, we're asking everybody essentially, who you think the best candidate for the economy would be?
Bernie Sanders.
Without a doubt. Why is that?
No question.
Policies?
Well, I think it's quite simple again. If you look at something called velocity of money, you guys know what that is, I presume. Mm-hmm. That means how much gets spent and turns around. When you have the top...
And the velocity of money, which I assume every American is familiar with.
1% getting money, they spend 5-10% of what they earn. When you have the lower end of the economy getting money, they spend 100 or 110% of what they earn. As you've had a transfer of wealth to the top and a transfer of income to the top.
I genuinely think that the the relative unpopularity of the term velocity of money is a borderline conspiratorial effort on the part of our financial elites to prevent people from understanding what was held widely as common knowledge 100 years ago, which is that the purpose of government spending and taxation is to reintroduce wealth into the economy so that it might move and be facilitated in transactions. This is literally the reason currency exists. It's not merely a byproduct of Keynesian analysis. They were making currency 10,000 years ago for this exact reason. This is why it exists. Currency exists so it can circulate and facilitate transactions. That's why it exists. But no one talks about the velocity of money anymore. It's actually like, I think I could count all the times I've heard the talking heads on TV mention it on one hand. And I don't go out of my way looking for every CNBC segment that mentions it. I'm sure it comes up more often than that, but it is very uncommon. The idea that the velocity of money is irrelevant and the only thing that matters is the stock market going up is an incredibly modern phenomenon, but everyone talks about it like it's obvious and the only thing anyone has ever known. They all know they're lying. It's ridiculous. It's a cult. It is a cult. Well.
More than the Great Recession. A new Fox News poll found more than half of registered
I enjoy your takes, but I have a friend who criticizes you for still believing in electoralism. Well, listen, okay, I don't know if your friend has watched me recently, but trending positively from their perspective in my latest takes, okay? Just give me another couple of months.
Voters think they were better off financially 2 years ago than they are right now. But still, President Trump insists the economy is doing better than ever. Here he is.
You were a dead country, and today you're the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's true, we're the hottest country. 68 days we hit all-time record highs, and since the election, adding $9 trillion in value to your savings and retirement accounts, 401ks. Your 401ks, does anybody have a 401k? Well, your people are going to vote for me then.
Remember, a 401k is an American thing. This is uniquely American. The idea that the stock market should be buffeted with the immense wealth of everyone's retirement funds, this is an American thing. Oh, how should we safeguard people's retirements? Well, obviously, we should just auto-invest their money into the stock market so that the hedgies have more to play with.
There's no way. Will anybody with a 401k vote against Trump? Thank you.
Okay, so a little data there to give you some...
Yes, other countries are trending in this direction, though I don't think any country in the West does it as much as we do. But don't worry, you'll be heading there as well. It's not as though this is all a uniquely American phenomenon.
Context, how many Americans have a 401k? Of 70 million Americans, 43% of the working population, 60% of Americans have some sort of retirement savings plan.
Or 40% don't, in other words.
All of this is coming, I think, too important to know when this Fox News poll shows that 71% of registered voters disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy.
They were managing the amount of currency in circulation long before modern monetary theory. For example, in Rome, new emperors often mandated older coins from 1 to 2 emperors prior be turned in exchange under threat of execution if you're found hoarding old coins. Yeah, again, like this is kind of what I mean by like nobody's a liberal anymore. When I say the economy is going to collapse because everything's over-financialized and we no longer believe in maintaining a high velocity of money, I'm repeating wisdom that has been like well known for thousands of years. This is like this was known before economics as a discipline was even taught. It's so obvious that you want a high degree of currency, like velocity of currency to facilitate transaction, that it was being done back before we even had theories about economics. And yet now I'm called radical for believing in this. I know this sounds maybe a little bit like hyperbole, but it's true. You know, a lot of people, they're like, oh, Bosch is so doomer, oh, radical perspective, whatever. I'm literally just like, this is literally just how the fucking world works. It feels like, I feel like I'm dealing with the economic version of climate change denial, where even the Democrats don't acknowledge this. Do you see Democrats talk about this? When was the last time you saw a Democrat say, over-financialization is bad for the economy, Wall Street is robbing? So, okay, hold on, wait, because I want to be very clear with my language here. I have heard Democrats say, Wall Street is robbing Main Street. I have heard this, but I've never heard them clarify what exactly they mean. Because what they often mean, if you think about it, or if they're asked follow-up questions, is like, we should slightly amend the tax code or something. We should slightly adjust the upper margins of the income tax. They never go so far as to engage with like the fundamental problem, which is that the entire economy is built on debt leveraging now. They never talk about it. So it feels like I'm talking about climate change denial in a way. Like everyone who knows what they're talking about acknowledges that climate change is anthropogenic. It's happening. It's very, very, very bad and getting worse rapidly. But a lot of people just pretend it's not. They just pretend like, and I have to, I'm trying to point up, you know, don't look up. Yes, the over-financialization of the economy isn't just like a temporary blip in inequality. It will actually destroy industrial civilization. We've forgotten, like, the basic truths. No.
Joe, can the president outrun these numbers as we get closer to the midterms?
Look, I mean, consumer sentiment.
In the 20s on approval of economic handling for a Republican president. Good Lord.
Is an anxiety-based metrics, not necessarily based in any reality or data. I mean, if you look at some of the retailer stocks, consumer cyclicals, auto manufacturers, all those stocks are doing pretty well. 401ks are doing well.
See, like again, like this, the job here is for them to indoctrinate you into the cult. No one serious believes in this. No one cares. The number go up. Hey, well, on the plus side, did you know that even more money has been dumped into the money vortex? Yeah, it's no. They know what they're doing.
Exactly what President Trump said.
Go ahead.
The issue is that we have two things driving anxiety. We are in the middle of a war, right? That is going to push anxiety down. We have mortgage rates high. We got gas prices high. The gas rates we've seen will come down, the price of oil will come down as soon as whatever happens in Iran, whatever ending to this conflict happens. We saw the volatility work out itself when we perceived that it might be over, and I think that'll happen again.
Nobody believes this. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all sensible estimates of the price of gasoline indicate that it will continue to remain inflated for a long time to come, even if the war is immediately settled right now. Nobody believes it. There's no effort being put into the propaganda. We can just say whatever, you know?
Interest rates and the mortgage rates were below 1% in 2022. They went up to over 5% by the end of 2023. I mean, they haven't come down since Joe Biden's administration caused that inflation and took 1/5 of Americans' purchase power away. The rates aren't going to come down as fast as they've gone up, in that 1 year cycle, but they've come down every single year, past 2 years, since 2024. I mean, that's pretty good. It's not where I think we need to be. But I think the president the president was the one advocating for the replacement of Jerome Powell based on that fact. People pushed back on him, but he was the one saying, no, we got to get a change at the Fed to get the rates down lower.
Isaiah wants to jump in. I can see it
I mean,
He's
you know it's not going well.
Democrats can't inform the voter base about economics for fear that Republicans call it propaganda. I'm respectfully, Cope. Democrats are just as complicit. Democrats have continued to propagate the misinformation that the stock market highs in any way, shape, or form represent the economy doing well. They've continued to do this. They do it just as much as Republicans. Democrats tout stock market highs under Biden. They do the exact same thing. They're still committed to the great lie, the fundamental misinformation that in the allocation of wealth towards finance is good for the economy. I meant that as kayfabe? Yeah, I suppose. They don't even pretend.
People's personal finances. Gas is $5. Trump promised he was going to cut our energy bills in half. They're up 13%. Healthcare premiums are up 26%. I mean, they can just look around and see the way things are. Inflation's the highest level since the pandemic. So you want to know why consumer sentiment is where it is? The economy sucks. I mean, just point blank, period. And Joe, the point is that this is why the Republican Party is losing elections all across this country. Because people see their bank accounts.
Do we fuck with tinted glasses? I love tinted glasses. However, his are too small for his face. They should be a size up. Common problem. I have it as well. He seems to have a big head. I do too. When I go to like Warby Parker or whatever, I struggle to find frames that fit my face. I just have a big head.
Understand their wallets. And no matter what amount of Trump bragging about the golden age that he does, they still understand what it's doing to their wallet.
This is the exact Joe Biden playbook. I think we should just be very, very consistent. In 2024, we had 48 all-time market highs. Joe Biden mentioned almost every single one of them, even though inflation was also at 3.5%.
What we call like Joe Biden's behavior, the insistence that the economy was doing well because the recovery is going well and inflation is down and the stock market is doing well, is actually typical of basically every Western country and has been for the past 20 years. You know, ever since the turn of the millennium, basically every Western country, I mean, certainly since 2008 at the very least, the economy has lagged. People are less and less happy with their prospects. Nobody feels comfortable retiring or saving up money. But every, leader in every Western country, Germany, France, Italy, whatever, they're all like, ooh, but look at the stock market, look at the financials, look at the investment, look at the job creators. The pattern is consistent across the entire hegemon. The idea that, listen, wagey, it might seem bad from your perspective, but in actuality, green is good, the number's going up. Another byproduct of the fall of the USSR. To an extent, I think I'll say this much, okay? If the USSR had pushed the United States into another peerage conflict, if we got involved in another Vietnam-style conflict in the mid-2010s, Iraq and Afghanistan were unique. We spent a lot of money on those. We wasted a lot of money on those, but they were not by any means direct conflicts, right? We basically immediately occupied and took control of the cities in both Iraq and Afghanistan. It was mostly just insurgency fighting from that point forward. If we got involved in a Vietnam-style conflict back in 2006, 2008, 2010 or whatever, I think that America would have genuinely collapsed under the weight the way the USSR did with Afghanistan, If you take a look at how much money we're burning right now in Iran while doing essentially nothing other than peppering them with bombs and drone strikes, and still somehow we're burning through all of our ammunition, all of our money, the financialization of the Pentagon, I think that it would have unveiled the rod a little bit sooner. We could not sustain a modern Vietnam. Vietnam was devastating for us back then. Today, it would be apocalyptic. A Vietnam today, a conflict with a comparable degree of investment, expenditure, social and economic, would be it would just end America, no matter how high the stock market number is.
Even though his approval rating was also around 35%. And so Democrats at the time were saying rah the stock market, but now they're attacking Trump for doing the same thing. It's just
it's called the cycle of samsara. The next Democrat will do it as well. If Gavin Newsom wins in 2028, I guarantee you he'll continue to talk about all-time stock market highs as the economy sinks into nothing.
So wake up.
Totally.
Inflation was down 9%.
You
know what Joe Biden didn't do? He didn't start a war with Iran with no justification.
Yes,
no,
and he also didn't go put tariffs on everything as well.
They're sheep.
And so what we have here tonight, as we sit here, situation where it looks very likely that we're about to restart bombing of Iran. Okay, and there are a lot of reports out there that this is about to happen. And what that means is that all of the
let us have some hope Gavin won't win. Well, worth noting, I'm only saying Gavin because I'm being a little bit, sultry right now. Sultry is not the right word. Salty, maybe? No, not salty either. Pointed? Cynical? We'll go with cynical. maybe I'm feeling a little bit sultry, but that's not your business. I'll save that for my partner after I'm done with stream. I'm feeling a little bit cynical right now, but I think that any Democratic president would be put in the same position. I don't really think there's a way for the executive to undo what has been done. It's a Gordian knot that can only be, sort of unwound by cutting it. Why are they keeping these suit jackets buttoned? For the same reason the economy is bad. Nobody cares about anything and all expertise is gone, okay? Men keep their suits, their single-breasted suits buttoned for the same reason velocity of wealth is at an all-time low. And I'm not joking.
It's not just with the U.S. economy, but with the economy of every country in the world are about to get worse. And it means that the Iran war is going to go much longer than otherwise anticipated. And that is a disaster, not just for Americans, but for all people. And then if you think about the knock-on effects on energy and then manufacturing, and then rates will continue to go up, and then inflation, it's a calamity for the world economy.
Josh, I bet you
with no strategy whatever.
I bet you if we ran the clip of you in February, you'd have been saying the same thing. I guarantee you there's a clip in this building somewhere you saying the same thing.
There's some clip of you saying it's about to end.
I was caught if you're sitting to unbutton the jacket, but I guess that's not the case. No, you're correct. You should unbutton the jacket when you're sitting. Unless it's a double-breasted suit, in which case it varies depending on comfort. Double-breasted suits usually have a little bit more give in the stomach and chest. But yes, you are supposed to. The button should never look like it's straining on a suit.
It's about to end, and I keep saying it's not about to end.
Right now we have the stock market hitting a higher point than it was in February.
And at some point you're going to have to admit that we're in this quagmire because if you say it's going to end every single day and then it never ends, it's
I'll be right one of those days.
Yeah, except what kind of world will be left by the time that
I don't give a single shit about what any of these people are saying. I can't understand what they're saying because they're all talking over each other. I guess, I don't know, the point that I'm getting at is that everyone recognizes that the economy right now is hurtling towards a wall and nobody seems to know what to do about it because the only correct suggestions, the only real solutions are, we'll say, extraordinary and extra legal. There are no other solutions. Whatever happens, one thing is guaranteed. This will not resolve without a great deal of suffering globally. We're talking suffering to orders of magnitude greater than anything industrialized civilization has ever inflicted on itself. Whatever numbers we procured with previous tragedies, wars, genocides, it will be surpassed by the human cost of unwinding this knot. Preventative action could have prevented that, obviously. That's why it's called preventative action, but we didn't, and it's too late, and it's going to happen no matter what. Take a look at some of these numbers, man. Shocking stat of the day. I saw this while browsing. I actually had to... Can I be real with you? Can I say something that's true without sounding overly dramatic? Actually caught my breath for a second. Annual interest expense on U.S. public debt could rise to as much as 30% of government revenue by 2036, an all-time high. This would occur if the 10-year Treasury yield averages 4.7% over the next decade. It'll probably go higher than that, by the way. Or 55 basis points above the current projection of the Congressional Budget Office. This means nearly 1 out of every $3 of government revenue would go towards servicing debt, triple the level seen in 2022. In other words, the government needs to lower rates, but it can't. It can't lower rates. It's not possible for it to lower rates. Well, I mean, it's possible, but but it probably won't happen. It probably won't happen. We had a good run, bro. Yeah, we did. How would it be possible? You would need to make Stalin look like an anarchist. You would have to tax people with military ferocity. I'm talking like, and I'm being serious, and I'm not doing like a haha Fed post, haha laughing lefty la la la. Like, you would need to dedicate a significant portion of the federal budget towards militarizing the IRS and having them pursue the wealth of the wealthy with the kind of dedication that like the Stasi were going after political dissidents with. And that's not a joke. Like, that is what would need to be done. The situation we're in right now is historically unprecedented, both in how bad it is and how unable we are to stop it. Do you really? I don't think the wealthy are private militaries or anything. Do you think that the federal government, which is controlled almost entirely by the interests of capital, would be able to do something like that against capital? The problem wouldn't be wealthy individuals fighting against the IRS. It would be the government fighting against itself to prevent that from happening. Doesn't Trump want to force the Fed to lower rates to zero? Yeah, good luck with that. But that would cause its own problems. I mean, it's a stagflation thing, right? This stuff's stressing me out. This stuff stopped stressing me out when I stopped thinking this stuff is going to lead to an armed militia in the streets. Well, I don't really think it's going to lead to an armed militia in the streets, but it could very well lead to like 1 billion people starving to death or more. So you'd have to come to your own judgments as to which, you know, you have to make your own calls, unfortunately. No, it's impossible. What we're looking at right now is an apocalypse graph. You know, we're looking at like a fundamentally, ooh, God, net interest as a percent of GDP. Look at how low it was back in 2022, and it was bad in 2022. And keep in mind that this is based on a relatively optimistic assumption of the rates the U.S. government will be forced to pay on its debt. Imagine if it keeps going up like this. Imagine if we have another like wave of quantitative easing. The line could go up much faster than this. What's quantitative easing again? Money printer go burr from the Fed. Debt held by the public at 101% of GDP. Net interest payments rising from 3.3% of GDP in 2026 to 4.6% in 2036. I still think this graph is overly optimistic, frankly. But, you know, well, we'll see if we get our militarized IRS. Not necessarily unprecedented. The wealthy of Rome progressively stopped paying taxes and hastened the collapse of the empire because of the lack of money. I think it is unprecedented because this is going to happen much faster and hit much harder than anything that could have happened in Rome. The difference is that, like, Rome did collapse, but it was a slow, grinding, you know, segmented collapse that took place over centuries and centuries. It is very possible, and I don't want to predict this is going to happen necessarily because, again, you know, I don't want to Benny Johnson myself, or sorry, Dave Rubin myself on this one. But it could very well happen that at a point we just default, and then within the next year, a quarter of the population of the United States starves to death. We're dealing with a system of dependencies that is so complicated and interwoven and reliant on so many points of potential failure that you are not fed by like the local farm. You know what I mean? Mostly ruroids, right? No. No. No, no, no. This would not mostly affect the ruroids. That's a bit extreme. Yeah, it is. But that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. People will say it can't happen in the modern world, but it literally did happen in China. And it happened in China when a much greater percentage of the Chinese population farmed and got their food locally. Economic mismanagement in China led to an enormous famine that killed many people, even though at the time their economy was much more dedicated to, you know, subsistence agriculture than the United States economy is today. So we're talking about something that could potentially be a lot worse in its immediate impact, and we're less resilient to it than the Chinese were back in the 70s. Do you think the U.S. could break apart into blue states that form a somewhat functional liberal democracy and red states that become a hellhole? The problems that I'm talking about right now can't be spared if you live in a blue state. Red states will continue to get worse over time, and blue states will continue to get better relative to the red states. But what we're talking about right now is an apocalyptic economic crisis that would strike the entire planet. We're not talking about, like, differences in policy. The Democrats are not able or willing to address this. They're not capable of doing it. You know, there's no, like, they don't have a separate set of policies to address this. I don't know if any set of policies could address this. Like, Mamdani being the mayor of New York City doesn't detach New York City from the incredibly complicated global network of financial obligations and you know, like, mutual indebtedness and financialization and, like, where do you get your food from? You get it from here, 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 and here. Like, good governorship doesn't necessarily save you from any of this. Even if he is a good, well, good mayorship, I guess, not just governorship. Good mayorship. He's a very good mayor. I'm not trying to take Mamdani away from you nuts. One of the big reasons why I still believe in some limited fashion in electoralism is because I think if things really, really, really go to shit, I would rather people like Mamdani be talking to the cameras than people like Cuomo, you know? I would rather people like Mamdani be able to look levelly at the camera and say, this happened because Wall Street raped us to death. You want people in charge who can at the very least point the finger in the correct direction. You don't want, like, you don't want the Republicans or like Schumer or whatever in charge where they're just going to obfuscate it with their typical blur of, culture war nonsense, distracting this, that, the other, blaming Trump. Trump isn't responsible for this. He might have hastened it. He's a catalyst, but he didn't create this, you know? Trump could have been like never been born. All this might have just happened like, 5 years down the line. It's not fundamental. Trump did not create the global economy. For sure, Benjamin. Both are really important. I just think it's important to understand that a belief in electoralism isn't necessarily predicated on the belief that having good people in power will fix things. There are still plenty of good reasons to have good people in power. Even if things aren't going to get fixed necessarily. For example, a global economic collapse could very easily be followed up with mass purges of people left of center. That's certainly happened before. But if we have good people in charge, it's less likely that they point the finger at us, If things are going to go to shit, I don't want a bunch of fascist strongmen taking over, arguing that the only way for us to survive is to purge all of the lessers and like consolidate under isolationist America. I don't want an America of 100 million pointing guns inwards and outwards to lessen the number of hungry mouths. I want good people in charge, even if things are all going to go to shit. So me saying things are going to shit is not in any way, shape, or form an excuse from having to participate in these systems. Unfortunately, AI is bad. The UK is in just as bad of a position, if not worse, than the United States right now, with regard to everything that I'm describing. Their economy is almost as financialized, but in addition to being almost as financialized, they have less overall money to work with.